Listen, you're not gonna find anything on me, okay? Trust me.
Empty your pockets into the tray, sir, or we'll have to. Your pockets, sir?
Lady, the problem isn't in my pants.
Welcome back to Thinking Critical. This is Wes, and it's that time of the week where we talk about all things X-Men, and with me, as always, is my X-Men historian, my Marvel aficionado, Doc. What's going on, buddy?
I'm doing spectacular, sitting at home, watching the birds.
All right, so we do have some interesting news to cover. I don't know if everyone noticed this, but on Amazon.com, they started pre-ordering for the Ten of Swords hardcover coming out in November of 2020. And we finally have a list of all the comics that are going to take up the 15-issue run of Ten of Swords. Ten of Swords Creation #1, Ten of Swords Stasis #1, Ten of Swords Destruction #1, 3 issues of X-Men, 3 issues of Excalibur, 1 issue of Marauders, X-Force, New Mutants, Wolverine, Cable, Hellions, X-Factor, and another Ten of Swords finale issue that's to be determined as far as the name. Not exactly what we were expecting, right, Doc?
I kind of expected it to be a more typical, 5x3 or 3x5, with 3 issues of 5 titles or 5 issues of 3 titles. And the fact that they're doing it with all these one shots, and most of the, there's 3 issues of X-Men, 3 issues of Excalibur, but then it's more like tie-ins in the other books. And I'm almost wondering whether or not they've dropped the scope of this because of the general response. It's not really negative, but it's not like, okay, well, that's great. What is it? Kind of response that they've got from it. So you got Marauders, X-Force, New Mutants, Wolverine, Cable, Hellions, X-Factor, all getting 1 issue. And let me do my math here. That's 7 plus 6 issues of...
So it ends up being 17 issues instead of 15.
Yeah, it's grown, but I think it's also shrunk in the fact that it's not just going to be, they're not going to tie up their whole line in it the way that I initially expected them to. I'm wondering whether or not a lot of these one shots and the single issue tie-ins, the books other than X-Men and Excalibur, end up even really being necessary. Initially, I figured, it was a 15-part story, but now we're getting into it
looks like it's a 10-part story. The 3 Ten of Swords intros, X-Men Excalibur for 6 issues total, and then the exit issue.
And I'm wondering whether or not you even need the 3 one-shot issues. You might be able, maybe for parts of it. I'm betting that they're going to explore little aspects
to the event.
Yeah, well, but creation probably is important. But I'm betting that they're all going to explore different aspects of, like, doing setup for different aspects of the event. That's going to be mostly the X-Men issues and the Excalibur issues.
Yeah, well, clearly, because Jonathan Hickman and Tini Howard are like the creative archetypes of the story, it makes sense that their titles would get more issues into the event. But I am with you. It does feel like maybe those other ones are just tie-ins now. But noticeably absent on here is Children of the Atom. This kind of makes me think, because I don't see any of the other miniseries in here. Maybe that's actually a miniseries and not an ongoing.
Oh, I could have already called it a miniseries, whether or not that anybody at Marvel was willing to say it when it was announced, ignoring the fact that there is no such thing as an ongoing series at Marvel anymore, and everything is just a mini or a maxi series of varying lengths.
So, just looking at the composition, is this making you more excited, less excited? The same as you were beforehand?
I'm leaning towards a little more excited because it looks like they might have scaled it down.
So we talked enough about Ten of Swords. There's a couple other items that we need to talk about. Some people are starting to realize that the timeline within Dawn of X isn't making any sense. This week in X-Force #9, we're being told that the events happening there are several months in the future from what has happened in just a couple issues back, and things aren't really meshing up as far as the timeline. What do you think about that, Doc? Is this intentional on Jonathan Hickman's part?
I think it is. I mean, he's been playing with time and showing things out of order since House of X, Powers of X. And to continue that into the Dawn of X books is not terribly surprising, even though we expected a little more straightforward storytelling. It seems like that's, you know, they're continuing that jumping around in time, except for it's not jumping, you know, in that X1, X2, X3, 10 years, 1,000 or 100 years and 1,000 years. It's not really jumping that far, but it is jumping around in time a lot so that it can avoid. I'm betting that stuff happens between X-Men or X-Force 8 and X-Force 9 that they don't want to tell us yet. You know, it's in order to keep a lot of the surprises for later. Mm-hmm. That's my guess. As a reader, it kind of confuses me a lot of times, especially when they don't bother to tell us like right at the beginning. Like, oh, and by the way, this jumped 4 months ahead. Because I'm sitting there going like, wait, how in the hell did Domino get healed in X-Force 9? Like, I don't remember that happening. Did I miss an issue?
Well, she didn't get healed. She got resurrected.
Well, she got resurrected. But like, I sit there and I think like every time whenever they start jumping around like that, I always feel like, did I miss an issue? Or was there another issue I was in a different series I was supposed to read that I missed? It frazzles my brain and I don't like it. But I'm not a huge fan of, you know, non-linear storytelling. Maybe it's just because I'm a little bit of a dummy and I like just being walked right through it. But no, but I do think it's at least semi-intentional in order to hold some surprises back so that they can spring stuff on us later and be like, oh, and this is how the thing that happened before meets up with the thing you already saw happen, you know, in the time jump a couple of months into the future.
So, you know, we've noticed that the costumes aren't matching up. Characters are in places that don't make sense because they're dead, you know, in one story, but they're not in the other. And X-Men is basically being told in one story increments. There's a good chance that all of these are out of order. Some of these could be in the far distant future. You just don't know at this point.
Yeah, and I think that's something that we might be seeing 50 years in the future. I mean, I don't know, especially since aging doesn't matter, since they can just keep getting resurrected. So unless we're seeing the human supporting characters, and they've kind of eliminated a lot of them, you know, from X-Men, unless we start seeing human supporting characters and them aging, we can't really know when the hell this is with Resurrection. Everything could be all out of order. Everything could, you know, one issue might be taking 20 years in the future, but everybody's still going to look the same because they're all resurrected.
I agree with you. It's a little bit confusing. I'm still on Dawn of X, but I've certainly curtailed my reading down. I'm on X-Men, X-Force, X-Men, Fantastic Four, Wolverine, but I've basically cut the fat on the rest of them. It's just not all worth my time anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I am going to pick up Hellions because I'm curious about that. And Jed McKay is not a bad writer.
Zeb Wells.
Oh, that's Zeb Wells. Okay, Zeb Wells is not a bad writer either.
Yep, he's doing Spider-Ham.
Wait, who the hell's which one's Jed McKay doing then? I could have sworn he was doing an X book.
No, he's doing the thing we just talked about. He's doing Infinite Destinies.
Oh, Infinite Destinies. Okay, so that must be where I saw his name pop up recently.
Yes, you're doing double duty this week. You did Geekspan. Now you're doing it. You got the writers confused. I do it all the time. The last subject we're going to cover before we hit up that X-Force book there at the end, despite having these Dawn of X trade paperbacks that are collecting all the Dawn of X issues that they're releasing before they start collecting them by title, they're now going to do an X-Men Dawn of X Saga #1, which is basically to catch everyone up, I assume, leading into the Ten of Swords story so people can jump into that event series by reading this comic book. I don't know who Jess Harold is, but that is the writer. It's going to have various artists, I'm imagining, from across the X-Men line. It seems pretty pointless to me, but do you think this is a good idea for people to jump in if they want to get on the Ten of Swords event, but they haven't been reading Dawn of X from the beginning?
Yeah, this feels like a weird callback to something that the Marvel was doing about 10, 15 years ago, where they'd, start a series and then they'd shortly thereafter be leading to an event, and then they'd release a little, they kept calling them the sagas. And it would be kind of just almost an illustrated Wikipedia article of the couple of issues or couple of months of issues leading up to the event, in case people that are interested in the event go, oh, well, I needed to read this other stuff, so I should probably go back. And this just, it's a good primer for that. But if you're already reading most of this stuff, there's no point in it. Maybe they're hoping that the Ten of Swords is going to have appeal to comic readers that haven't jumped onto Dawn of X or House of X, Powers of X. 32 pages, $4? Mm-hmm. At least it gets them caught up. I'm betting, I don't know who this Jess Harold person is either, but I'm betting it's going to basically just be like a lot of the other saga books that they've done in the past, where it's basically just kind of a illustrated Wikipedia article. And it would not shock me actually if there's no original art at all in this, and it just grabs
a narration that explains how the stories tie together.
Yeah, and it just grabs some panels and pages from important panels, important pages of all the books that have been released so far, and then just kind of collage style puts them into a book, and she's basically doing nothing but narrating. That's
I'm not going to be reading. I've been reading Dawn of X. You're probably not going to be forking over the $4 for a bunch of information you've already had. But if you're interested in Ten of Swords and you're like, man, I wish I got on the Dawn of X title or Dawn of X wagon, you don't have to get all those trade paperbacks. You can just wait for this one shot, and it'll prime you up and have you ready for that event series that's coming up.
Yeah, I mean, rather than needing to read everything, especially if you're only there for the Ten of Swords, this is probably useful. If you're thinking about sticking around to Dawn of X books afterwards, maybe go and check out those trades. But if you just need kind of a primer leading into X of Swords, this is probably all you're really going to need.
All right, Doc. So there were a limited number of X-Men titles this week within Dawn of X. Next week's going to be huge. We probably won't even talk about any news stories. We'll just talk about the comics because there's 5 or 6 of them. But the only one I read this week was X-Force number 9. Did you read any other? Was there an Excalibur book this week?
There might have been an Excalibur book, but you couldn't pay me enough to read anything that Tini Howard writes. So no, the only thing I read as well was X-Force, and I actually only had a chance to read it this morning. So it's actually pretty fresh in my brain.
So it's basically, we're going back to Terra Verde, the island where the plant people had taken over, and Beast kind of made a stupid decision and left one of them alive. And it turns out the plants have taken over. What do you think about this? I was kind of disappointed.
I think I've already seen this movie, and it came out in 2008, and it was called The Ruins, because that's what it basically feels like. In that movie, a bunch of college kids go on spring break and decide to do some sightseeing in Mexico, and they go and find this old giant temple, but all the ground around it is salt, like the earth is salted in every direction for like 50 yards or something. And they go climbing up this thing, and they're like, well, let's go check out what's down inside of it. Let's go explore this cool looking, Mayan or Incan or one of the South American, I'm not super familiar with the native Mexican, the native tribes of Central America. I can't remember which one it was, but so they go climbing in it, and there's an evil sentient vine thing that is trying to escape and infecting them, and it, if it even scratches you, you're infected zombie virus style. The natives there recognize it and then try to kill anybody that tries to leave because otherwise it will take over the world. And that's basically exactly what this issue of X-Force was.
So am I the only one? I would rather the X-Force book just go back to being about X-Force operations. I'm tired of the plant people. I'm tired of all this stupid nonsense. Just have Wolverine, Kid Omega, and Domino going out on operations while Beast and Jean Grey and Sage provide, support operations and go after like Xeno and some of these other enemies out there. This stuff is getting boring and tiresome. Just go out there and do cool shit.
Yeah, exactly. I am so tired of hearing about plants. As I said earlier, it's like Jonathan Hickman decided he needed to get a green thumb and he just became obsessed with gardening. And that's all he's doing. And, this one's Ben Percy. So but yeah, no, if it was just, them being the kind of black ops force and security force and enforcement arm of Krakoa that protects their national interests or whatever, that'd be a lot cooler than me giving a damn about seeing more plants.
Yeah.
And
I'm kind of over it. I wish they would just stop doing this and just go back to the cool stuff that made the story awesome to begin with. Because it's kind of losing its luster.
Exactly. It really is. And, because X-Force for a while was the best book. Now X-Men is kind of taking that because it was the book that felt most like House of X, Powers of X. And now X-Men's taking that mantle over while X-Force does all the stuff that everyone hated about the first 4 issues of X-Men. Yeah. With the goddamn plants everywhere.
I couldn't agree more with you, Doc. We've run out of time. We went long. When we start talking about X-Men, this thing can go on for 45 minutes. Doc, I really appreciate you coming on the channel today, talking about X-Men. You have any parting words for the viewers?
Try not to spoil me this week because I don't know if I'll be able to get to my local comic shop or not. And so I'm going to try to find a way to read stuff. And but yeah, there's a bunch of X books coming out this week. Give them a shot, unless any of them are Children of the Atom
or Excalibur, any of that nonsense. But there's a lot of good X-Men comics this week. We'll definitely be talking about a lot of stuff. We'll figure it out one day, way or the other, Doc.
All right, brother.
All right, later, Bo. Oh, did I call you Boo?
I think you just called me Boo or Bo.
Okay, yeah, I called you Bo. I didn't call you Boo. I call my wife. I call you my Bo. Later, Bo.
Later, dude.
If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. I would appreciate it very much. It helps us attract more views for the channel. Subscribe for future commentary, comic book news, and reviews. And don't forget to ring the bell for notifications. If you want to talk comics, movies, and much, much more, you can follow me on Twitter at Wes_from_TC. With that, Salamat Po, and I'm out.